Unilever Nigeria PLC is being compelled to buy dollars above the market rate because because of a lack of dollar liquidity. The local unit of Unilever PLC bought the greenback from money changers and lenders at between 440 to 450 naira on the average in the first half of the year, according to Adeshola Shotande Peters, who's the finance director at the company. He revealed this at an investor conference in Lagos. The INA window, of course, the rate's at 411 naira per dollar. To more matters in FX, fraudulent players in Nigeria's FX space have been put on notice. Nigeria's Bankers Committee yesterday announced that henceforth, authorized foreign exchange dealers in the country would blacklist customers by placing a PND, a post-note debit, on their accounts if they're caught using fraudulent means to procure foreign exchange. The Ivory Coast has revived a plan to sell as much as 1 billion euros, about $1.2 billion of debt overseas, according to people familiar with the matter. The world's biggest cocoa producer is also considering requesting a new $1 billion loan from the International Monetary Fund after its previous program ended in December. Formal negotiations may start next month in a bid to get a first disbursement in February. African nations are being urged to establish their own public health institutes to help identify and contain future disease outbreaks. By being better prepared for future outbreaks, the region may be able to limit the devastation wrought on its economies from diseases. Last year, Sub-Saharan Africa recorded its worst contraction on record from the fallout of the coronavirus pandemic and is poised to be the world's slowest growing region in 2021, according to the International Monetary Fund. Joining us to discuss further is Economist Gospel Obele. Gospel, good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us. Starting with this matter of great stuff with the CDCs, how would you rate the capacity of African nations to set up mini centers for disease control to monitor outbreaks?
Well, it's quite unfortunate that we have to get to this point, all right, to understand the dire need and the call for it. This wouldn't have been the case already if we had done our assignment in terms of ensuring we have a very a proper healthcare system across the continent. So it also reflects in the economic numbers and how the pandemic has grossly affected the African economy as a whole. So, but however, there are deep questions around the capacity for us to do this to a large extent. But I think it's a very necessary call and it's important, and the time is now. There are questions around how we can harness local talent, context education, and the required technical skills to scale this mini CDC mandate in a sense.
What about the capacity to manufacture vaccines? What's your take on that front?
Well, we can look at that from two different angles, all right, because there are a lot of context advantage to that in terms of things we can leverage on, all right, to begin to manufacture local vaccines. We've not been able to tap into our natural resource and all of these things to provide vaccine options for us. But on the other end, having to produce vaccines as advised by the West and all of that is also brings a lot of capacity issues, all right, and a lot of technical issues for us to scale that, as well as the financing issues and the access to market challenges with regards to that. We've also seen that there are big questions around vaccine inclusion in Africa, and it's also a rising conversation in the West now that it's an important indicator, all right, for Africans to recover the African economy, the recovery for the African economy. So capacity is a big question when you look at it in its entirety. And I don't think we have the capacity in the sense. We need a lot of assistance to be able to leverage context and to scale what we have vis-a-vis what's required to get out of this menace in a sense.
Thanks for that. Let's move to the Ivory Coast. Why is the Ivory Coast taking this reported decision to revive its bond sale of $1.2 billion?
The primary argument is to enable government spending, which is to a large extent the literally politically correct and conventional reasons, all right, that governments in this region would give, largely because it's also understandable that a lot of countries run budget deficits. But however, the big question is not always funding government expenditure in a sense. The big question is what is funded, number one, and the big question is also do we have the pipelines or the productive pipelines to ensure that we can build some form of investment around this financing and ensure we can pay back in due time. Those are the big questions in the room that we need to solve. All right. And also, do we have the institutional capacity and the effectiveness to see through capital expenditure and to ensure that there are developmental returns in the mid to long term. These are the big concerns, not just to increase government spending. And so it's worrisome for me to a large extent because it's becoming a normal situation for many African countries trying to use government expenditure as the argument for more debt and rising debt portfolio in the sense.
Gospel, I want to quickly get your take on what we heard from Unilever, FX issues, and I guess we can lump together the Bankers Committee decision to sanction fraudulent FX transactions. But how do we solve the FX issue in Nigeria, Gospel?
To be very honest, the value of the currency is the first place we need to start from. The value of the currency is strongly a function of the level of productivity in that economy. That's the base of this whole crisis. All right. And then once you have that, you now begin to think of access to market solutions. All right. So when you don't have access to market solutions, meaning that you're on the exporting side of market dynamics to a large extent than the importing side, and as well as you have a strong, widespread productive base. Once you don't have that too, the currency of that country will keep being vulnerable to global shocks, local shocks, and all of these dynamics. All right. Now, that's the first place we need to sort structural issues on. Once we can get that running, then we'll be able to position ourselves to earn more foreign exchange from the export window and all of that. And once you have that secured, reserves is secured, all right, FX supply is also secured, as well as made available to those who need to do some form of import business or some form of value exchange through the export window. So it makes it a lot easier. So the long-term, even short-term sustainable solution to this is ensuring there is a productive economy as well as access to market solution for a critical mass of small and medium enterprises. That said, all right, will now be to ensure that all of these policies that are being rolled out are being done with caution. All right, I follow through on the Bankers Committee position and all that. It makes sense, beautiful. I love it because it will help us put a form of track on foreign exchange transactions and all of these things. But a lot of things are not defined within the statement. All right, what do you term as dubious transactions? All right, even the banks, in my own opinion and experience, I do not think, all right, understand the nature and the nuances of FX demand in this context. All right, and being able to classify what you don't understand as dubious can be very, very worrisome. Also, and vis-a-vis the internal controls that different banks will be putting in place to ensure that, all right, the CBN FX, new FX policy sees the light of day. So I think a lot of understanding context has to come into fore, especially when it comes to small and medium enterprises, because they are the most hurt with this. And if we don't do this, we'll find a situation where we begin to see transfer costs, all right, meaning the cost of getting foreign exchange in a parallel market will be transferred on the cost per item of a product to the final consumer, which then again affects the cost of living. So I think we need to think about it in parts and holistically as well as structurally going forward.
Excellent stuff. Gospel Obele, Economist Gospel. Always a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for taking us through.
Thank you so much for having me as always, Rotus.
All right, man.